Well, happy Father's Day. Can we give it up for our dads today? Yes, we got some amazing dads. We want to welcome you today. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Justin. I'm one of the pastors here, and it's a great day. I don't know if you feel it, but man, these guys are rowdy, and we're still coming. Is anyone still coming off, like, you have the joy, residual joy from the win on Thursday night? Okay, some of you do. I know some of you have been asking, are you guys endorsed by the Toronto Raptors? Because you talk a lot about them, and we are not endorsed. Although, if you are watching, we do like OVO City Edition jerseys, preferably in white, extra large. Just saying. Okay. No, I'm just joking. But here's for those of you that get a little uptight about church and talking about sports in church, I wanted to just read to you what the Bible has to say about this, and this is really important. I want us to get this together today. I found this passage, and I just felt like I needed to read it to you. Okay, so here it is. Again, very serious, very very important for us. Ezekiel 39 verse 4. It says this. It says that you will collapse on the mountains of Israel along with all of your warriors and the nations that have accompanied you. They're the raptors. Vultures and wild animals will feed on you. Just saying. Where's the individual from North Carolina? There he is. Do you like apples? That's great. How you like them apples? No, I just joke. We love that you're here. We're nicer than we are right now. But anyways. Man, that's so good. We've been having a lot of fun over the last few weeks, and this story of the Raptors is fun because our nation's got around this story. Whether you like basketball or not, it's this thing that's become sort of this fun rallying point. And I got thinking about what it is about this narrative that's so intriguing for us. Like, even for us as Canadians, we kind of were like, Stanley Cup was like, oh yeah, it was pretty good. But like Raptors, like, it was so exciting. And I think for us, what makes a story exciting is the fact that it's unlikely, right? What makes a story great is not that it was a likely ending, it was an unlikely ending. And the truth is, if you were to actually look at our opponents, even in, the Warriors, the stats said that they were actually 1,100 days in a row favored to win the championship. All right, 1,100 days. And so as you begin to, live in that narrative, if you're from North Carolina, that's a boring narrative. It's like, oh yeah, Warriors are going to win again. It's not that compelling. But when you're not favored to win and something changes and the narrative changes, it becomes this compelling story because it's unlikely. And I think that's the thing for every one of us. We connect with unlikely heroes because it resonates with me and you, that we don't feel like we're heroes very often. At least I don't. Maybe you do, but I don't. And we don't resonate with that because we recognize in us is this unlikely nature to be a hero. And so for a lot of us, we connect with these stories because we recognize that for some of us, we've been born into what feels like not privilege. We've been born into dysfunction. I don't know if you feel like your family's dysfunctional sometimes. I do. Just yesterday, my wife and I were talking in the kitchen, or so I thought, and I heard her say, how are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm doing pretty good. And I look over, she's talking to the plant. Okay, I thought it was like Father's Day weekend. She's talking to her plants. Okay, so anyways, you thought we were loving, but you get it. We're dysfunctional, right? We resonate with dysfunctional heroes because we are dysfunctional, and we resonate with those that grew up with the wrong type of friends and obvious weaknesses and were quirky and didn't fit the mold because we don't fit the mold. And we sort of resonate with people that are outsiders because we don't feel like we're insiders either. We feel like we have an accent, or we have a skin color, or we have a demographic, or we have a barrier, and we just don't think like everybody else, and so we don't fit, we're labeled. And so for us, we resonate with these stories. In fact, that was my boys, speaking of Father's Day, my boys love watching movies with me, and so we watch a lot of Pixar animated movies. My boys are turning 9 and 6. Okay, it's hard to keep up with these ages. 9 and 6 this month, and so we watch all these animated movies. And I got thinking the other day that literally every Pixar movie is an unlikely hero. It's a clownfish that's an overprotective dad. It's a trash compactor. It's a grouchy old widower and an incompetent young wilderness explorer in the movie Up, right? It's a street rat with culinary dreams. It's The Incredibles, a regular family that loses their job and struggles with weight gain just like you do, right? So So we resonate with those stories because it means that there's hope for my unlikely life, that it will matter. And that's what we all want, right? We all want to live a life that matters. We all want to live a life that has meaning and purpose and is full and leaves a legacy. And so today we're going to talk about that. Last week we talked about Joseph. We did a character study on him. The week before was Abraham. And Pastor Bill just did a great job. You should, listen, we got a great pastor. Like, we really do. Let's give it up for it, man. I love Pastor Bill. He's been doing a great job, and so just encourage him. He's a fantastic dad as well. But he unpacked those the last 2 weeks. And today we're going to talk about Moses. And what's interesting about Moses, I'll just give you a quick synopsis of him, is that he's the most unlikely person to talk about thousands of years after his death, right? He really is. He has a speech impediment. He stutters. You know, he's born into the wrong family. He has anger issues. He kills someone when he's 40. Some of you feel like you want to kill someone when you're 40. Hopefully it's not your kids. You know, he's a shepherd for 40 years. He's constantly doubting himself. He doesn't accept responsibility. And yet, not more than 2,000 years later, we're talking about him. So today we're gonna learn this key thought, and I think it can be summarized by this: is that heroes aren't born, they're made. They're made. This isn't something that you're born into. It's not something that just happens. It's something that you choose to be and to do. And so we're going to explore that through the life of Moses. Now, what's interesting about Moses is his life is kind of categorized or broken up into these 3 segments. It's kind of like 3 chapters to his life. And this came alive for me this week because I think for us, in order for us to realize who we are, in order for us to become the unlikely heroes that God even says we're to be, that we were created for greatness, in order for us to become that we have to go through these 3 sort of things that Moses does. And here's my philosophy in life. If I can learn from other people's mistakes and be better for it, I want to, right? If I have to learn them the hard way, I feel like I'm the idiot. The joke's on me. So hopefully this will help us as we go, like, how do I become who I was made to be? By looking at the life of Moses. And so we're going to look at sort of his life across these 3 sort of stanzas or 3 chapters of his life. So give you a little context. If you have a Bible, you can turn to Exodus chapter 2, verse 11. Or if you have an app, you could do that as well, or follow along on the screen. But I'll give you some context. Pharaoh is the ruler of Egypt at this time, and he's ordered all of the baby boys to be killed. And the reason he's done this is because all of these children, he doesn't know which one of them are a threat to his kingdom, and so he decides to kill them all to eliminate any threat to his power and his rule and his reign. And so as a result, Moses' mom covers this basket in tar pitch and puts the baby into the basket and floats him down the river. And so if you actually come to think of it, maybe that's why he has the issues he has, because his mom floated him down the river. I don't know, but anyways, that's not funny. Okay, Exodus chapter 2, verse 11, here's what it says. It says that one day after Moses had grown up, he's about 40 years old at this point. It says that he went out to where his own people were, and he watched them at their hard labor. I'll just pause there for a second. I think what's interesting about this story right off the top is that Moses has already figured out that he's not who everyone says he is. He's already learned that he doesn't really belong, he doesn't really fit. He's still an Israelite slave in Pharaoh's kingdom. So he may have privilege, but he's already seeing that this isn't who I am. And so here he is as he's watching, and he says that he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And so when Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh, and he went to live in Midian. I was thinking about this for us today. I think for every one of us, as we become who we were made to be, and by the way, that never ends. When you're 80 or 90 or 100, you're still constantly becoming who you were made to be. As we become who we were made to be, there comes a point for every single one of us where we have to reject who we are not. Right? You have to reject who you aren't. This is sort of the first step. There comes a point where every one of us has to reject the opinions of someone that, how many know somebody's got an opinion on what you should do and what you should be and where you should go, right? There comes a point where you have to reject the narrative that because of your past and because of your mistakes and your patterns, that this is who you should be and what you should do. That in order for you to move forward, that you have to reject something. There has to be a rejection of, this is not who I am. This is what Moses does. And so I was thinking, this week I was reminded of when I graduated high school. I remembered his name this morning. My guidance counselor, his name was Mr. Sutherland. And if you're watching, it's all good, Mr. Sutherland. Everything's worked out. But Mr. Sutherland, I remember meeting with him and my music teacher. And growing up, music was sort of my life. It was what I did. I played any instrument I could. I played in any band that I could. That's what I loved. And so my guidance counselor, I remember him sitting down with me, and my music teacher was there, and he said, like, Justin, we really think that you should, consider these schools. Here's some great music options and whatnot. And so they began listing them, and I said, like, I think I'm going to go to Bible college. I just kind of said it quietly, and I'll never forget his words. He said, what a waste. What a waste. And it's funny because I remember in that moment just silently thinking to myself, you don't know me. You know a part of me, you think you know me, and yeah, there's this narrative around me that this is who I am and it's what I do, but it's not all that I do. It's not all that I am. There's more to the story. How many know there's more to the story? And so for me, that was that moment where I realized, man, like you don't actually know. And it was interesting because there's a risk in rejecting what you know. There's a risk in rejecting the comfortable. There's a risk in saying, this is not who I'm going to be, and rejecting who you are not because you don't know who you are yet. And so I remember going like, I'm going to school, and I'm going to go for a year, and I don't know what's going to happen. And what's amazing is in those first couple of years of going to school, I ended up going and deciding to stay. And for over those first 2 years, I met every couple of weeks with this one individual who began to speak into my life possibility that I'd never believed about myself. I believed greatness was always outside of me. I believed it was for other people who did far superior things than me. And this person began to speak into my life, and they would call out things in me I never even knew or believed in me. And that person was Pastor Bill. For 2 years, he spoke those things into my life. And as a result, I met my wife. As a result, I'm here today. All of these things happened because I rejected the narrative that this was who I was meant to be. And I think for Moses, the story is the same. Moses, he spent 40 years in this Pharaoh's court being told who he is and who he isn't. And he's allowed these other voices to define him. And in this misplaced moment of passion, he takes the life of this man because he doesn't know what to do with the fact that this is not who he is. And he finds himself running into the wilderness. And so the challenge for us is there is a risk factor to rejecting who you're not, but there's also a risk in being defined by who you're not. Let me explain it this way. The challenge for us is if you become defined by the things that you're not, that you don't actually know who you are, you find yourself in the wilderness. When you don't know who you are and you've rejected who you're not, you're just lost in the wilderness. I think this is where a lot of us get stuck. We define ourselves by ideas like, I'm not my dad. And our whole life is spent trying not to be our dad because we had an experience with him, or not our mom, or not our parents. And so as a result, we never actually shape into who are we. We just know who we're not. And I think this is it, especially for us millennials. Okay, I'm on the beginnings of the millennials, is that we're really great at deconstructing who we're not. We're really great at rejecting who we're not. I'm not religious. I'm not, I'm not this, I'm not that. I'm not my dad. I'm not this kind of person, and I'm not too uptight. But we failed to actually reconstruct who we are, right? We actually failed to reconstruct the fact that we were created for something great, and we can't quite articulate it. And I think for a lot of us, including Moses, we get lost for him for 40 years, again, trying to figure out, who am I? We go through midlife crisis, and we try to buy motorcycles, and we try to go on trips, and we try to fill our lives up so that we can sort of figure out, who am I? I don't know. And the challenge for us is in an information age where our Instagram feeds are flying by, and our Snapchat feeds are flying by, and our Facebook, and this and that, and these opinions are surrounding us, that it's hard for us to ever listen to go, who am I? What was I created for? So the first part is rejecting who you're not. But if you don't accept who you are, you'll find yourself in the wilderness. And this is where Moses finds himself. And so we're going to pick up back in the story, Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. It says this. It says that now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, who is his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness. Don't miss that, by the way. When you don't know who you are, you'll find yourself in the wilderness. He's on the back side of it. He's in the furthest place, lost, trying to accept who he is. He can't figure it out. And it says that he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And I like this imagery, and this is powerful imagery, and it's easy to get kind of confused and lost in it in the Old Testament a little bit, but it's powerful, and I'll explain why. It says Moses, he saw that there was a bush that was on fire and it didn't burn up. And what you need to know about fire is when you read about fire in the Bible, it's always around this idea of refining. There's this notion that something is being burned away to reveal something better, right? Even you think of a forest fire. There's something about that that's incredibly scary and dangerous, but beautiful because burning away the old allows for the new to come out. So he sees this fire burning, and Moses goes up to it, and he thought, I'll go over and I'll see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. And then in verse 7, it says, the Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the land, or from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of the land into a good and spacious land, the land flowing with milk and honey. And get this, look at what Moses says to God. He says, who am I? Who am I? How many have lived in that before? Who am I to do anything that's significant? Who do you think you are? We love using that phrase because it's reflective of what we think of ourselves. Who am I to do anything that's great? I'm Canadian, right? We live in that excuse, if we're honest, quite a bit. It's also a human excuse. Who am I? What do I have? I have all I see is dysfunction and weakness. And he says, who am I to go and do this? Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And then he goes on, he says, suppose that I go to them and I say, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say, well, what's his name? Then what shall I tell them? And God said to Moses, and I want you to get this today because it's really powerful. He says that I am who I am. That this is what you're to say to the Israelites, that I am has sent me to you. You see, for 80 years, Moses spent his time saying, I'm not. And God's response to him is, I am. Moses lives in this world of I'm nots, and God says, yeah, but I am. Yeah, but you don't know, God, because you don't know that I have a past and I have history, and I can't do that because of all of the things that I've done and the shame that I have experienced. And God says, yeah, but I am enough to make up the difference. I am enough when you feel like you're weak. You say, but yeah, I'm not though. I don't have what I need. And God says, yeah, well, I'm your supply. You say, yeah, but I'm not. Like, I'm not sure. And God says, well, yeah, I'm the peace that surpasses all understanding. You know, yeah, I don't have enough knowledge. And God says, come ask me. I have wisdom. I give it freely. So every time that I say I'm not, God responds and he says that I am. And I got thinking in my life that, man, for like, I'm pushing 40 now. Like, okay, I was back to the Raptors, by the way. I was at game 5 and I got this t-shirt and I'm so pumped about it. And I didn't talk about it, so that's that. Anyways, game two. I was watching it with some friends. And I was like, guys, this series is like watching the 93 like Jays. Like, this is like magic again happening. I said, do you guys remember that? And they're like, we weren't even born yet. And I was like, oh my, I'm getting old. So I finally had that old moment. But anyways, I'm pushing up on 40, and I got thinking from my life, I lived for so long in this narrative that things that were good came outside of me. I don't know if you feel like this, but I lived in this, and it's only been in the last several years I've started to reject this notion. And Moses, it took him 40 years too. Maybe that's how long it takes. I don't know. But I wish it could take, if I could go back, I wish I could have learned this earlier, that great things don't happen outside of me. They happen inside of me. They're not outside of me. Rejecting what I'm not is to accept that God says that I am enough. And I don't know if you know about this good teaching that's coming at you right now, but it's coming at you and it's about to get really good. Because God says that I am enough. When you feel like you're not, he says I am. And when you say, I don't have what it takes, God says that I am. He says, what's in your hand? What do you have? Because I'm going to take it. I'm going to use your weakness to actually reveal my goodness. I'm going to reveal something great. Look at what Moses says. He says, yeah, but what if they don't believe me? What if they don't listen to me? What if they say, who do you think you are? The Lord didn't even appear to you. Like you're drinking the Kool-Aid. Like this stuff doesn't happen. Like really? You think God speaks to you? You think God tells you to do things? You think you could lead in boldness? You think that you could actually be a great dad? That you could forgive yourself for your past and you could allow God to turn something bad into something beautiful? That you could forgive your own father and you could begin to restore something? You think that's beyond you? And God says, I am. He says, you think that the Lord did appear before you? And guess what God says to him? He says this. It's like he ignores him and he says, Moses. He says, Moses, what's in your hand? What's in your hand? And I got thinking, if you find yourself like me in the wilderness trying to figure out who you are, the best question you can ask is, what's in your hand? And I love this story because we resonate with it because when you look at Moses, what's in his hand, it's a staff. It's a staff, which was a symbol of a shepherd, which was a symbol of weakness, which was a symbol of somebody who had a lack of worth, who people looked down upon, as the lowest of the low on the backside of the wilderness in Midian. And God says, actually, what's in your hand, because I want to begin to use it for something great. You say, I'm not enough. God says, I am. And he says, I want you to put your hand, I want you to put it in your cloak. And he pulls it out and it's covered in leprosy. And this was a death wish. This was the ultimate sign of weakness, that you had no value. And then he says, put it back in your cloak, and he puts it back in and pulls it out, and he's fully healed. And he uses this imagery to remind us that, listen, you may feel weak. You may feel like you have very little to offer. You may feel like your past defines you. And into this, God says, I will meet you. God says that I am enough. And when you feel like you're not, when you feel like you're a failure, God beats us in that. And I don't know if that gets you pumped up, but it's getting me pumped up right now because I believe it's true. When you're not enough, God says that I am. What do you have in your hand? What's in your hand? This is the question for us today. And as we look at our lives, as we look forward and we begin to discover, God says, I actually want to take your weakness and I want to use it for my glory. I want to use it to show you and reveal my strength in you. So what's in your hand?
This is my wonderful stepdad, Randy. It feels like he's been around forever.
This is my lovely stepdad of 28 years now. I should say just dad at this point.
Growing up, it was just my mom and I. I had this fantasy that my parents are gonna get back together. When my mom met Randy, I just remember my mom would try to get us to act like father and daughter. I was not having it. I don't need this other person trying to come in and be my dad.
Your pole's all backwards.
Well, see? When I met Paul 28 years ago, I was a fiery little a brat.
You said it, not me. As a stepfather, you have boundaries and, the relationship, it develops over time. And I just took things, day by day, and, we grew as a family.
I told your mom when I first met her, I was like, I want this.
It took some time, but I suddenly saw Randy in a different light. There's this person right here that loves me and will do anything for me. And then it was like, boom, what are you doing? You have someone right there, like right in front of you.
I think she got the work ethic from me.
I do always have a job and pay my bills and...
Except your phone bill.
Well, I think parents should always keep you on their phone bill.
I do too, because that way I know she'll call us.
That's true, yeah.
So how do you envision your wedding?
Mainly, I want you to be the one to walk me down the aisle. But more than that, I was wondering if you'd adopt me and become my dad for real.
Everything that my biological father promised that he would do, you actually came through and did. I just wanted to ask you if you would like to adopt me as yours.
Love you.
Does your mom know about this?
I feel like I'm making up for something that I never had.
It feels like I had this family all along and I didn't see that I had it.
So heroes aren't born. they're made. And we don't always get to choose the cards that we're dealt. We don't always like the cards that we're dealt. And sometimes life isn't fair, and yet I'm reminded, even in the brokenness of what we experience, that God invites us to extend our hand and to say, God, what is it that you've put in my hand so that I can use it to show your glory? I could use it to do something that's significant, to make a difference, and to change the world. And so this is what the life of a hero looks like. So that's the question, is what is it that God's put in your hand? What is it? What relationships and what work and what future dreams and what future hopes and what skills and what thoughts and what ideas, what is it that God has put in you? Because as you begin to use those things and you question them in the beginning saying, who am I? Because I don't know if I have what it takes. So God meets us in that, and he responds by saying that I am. And if anybody questions you, he says, tell them that I am sent you. So this is the narrative that Moses reminds us of. And I love how the story continues. It says that Moses, he leads them out of Egypt, and as they get out of Egypt, they have a moment to pause, and here's what he says to the people. And actually, this is what God says to them. He says, now if you fully obey me and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you're to speak to the Israelites. And I just wanted to pause on this just for a second, okay? And I know this, I don't have a lot of time, but I want to pause on this because I don't know if you're like me, I don't really think of myself as a holy nation or a priest. I don't think of myself as a priesthood of believers or a holy nation, and yet this is what God calls you. He says that you're actually, for me it came alive this week, it's really simple. He says that you're set apart. That's what a holy nation is. It just means that you recognize your worth. You recognize that you're enough, even in your weakness, that God can meet you and make it great. He could take your pain and he can make it good. He could take the darkness and he can bring light. That you're set apart. Don't forget that today. Don't believe the lie that you're just who you are and you're just average. This is what's great about the kingdom of God. This is why part of the reason I follow God is because for me, the things that I think are great for me are a ceiling, and for him it's the floor. For God, it's the floor. With him, the ceiling is infinite possibility. He says, don't forget that you're a holy nation, set apart for something great. And he says, you're a priesthood. He says that you can go to me. Anytime that you need anything, you don't need to go through someone anymore. You can ask and you will receive it. If you need something, ask and he will meet that need. He'll meet you in it, and he is enough because he says, you may feel like you're not enough, but he says that he is. I am that I am. So do you know who you are? And it starts by asking what's in your hand. The last chapter, which I want to close with today, is of Moses' life, is we read about in Hebrews 11:27. It says, by faith that he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger, he persevered. This is an interesting word, persevered. I'll come back to here. It says, he persevered because he saw him who is invisible. This word persevered, it's weird. It's not translated in the Bible very often, but it's this word that they use words like courage and perseverance and resolve to describe it. It's like this idea that your legacy of your life actually is all about how you live your life. It's strengthening your resolve. So Moses, the last 40 years of his life, it says that he strengthened his resolve. Like, it's this amazing story. The first 80 years takes one chapter of the Bible. The last 40 years takes 4 books. Okay, it takes 4 books because he begins to believe something that's true. If you could get anything today, I challenge you to get this, is that there's something that God has in you, that he wants to unlock in you, that for you it's going to take courage. And it's not a one-off thing. It's not hey, I got 100,000 followers and I'm I'm a YouTube influencer. It's a lifetime of legacy. It's a lifetime of courage and leading your life towards this one who is invisible. And I love what he says near the end of his life. He describes it this way. How do you strengthen your resolve? How do you do this? How do you end strong? This is how he describes it to you. He says this. He says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your strength." It's so simple. Like, it's almost insultingly simple, but let me tell you this. Can I just share from my heart? the most significant people in my life, the people that have left a legacy in my life, the people that I believe leave a legacy for the generations to come are the people who simply do this. They love God, they love Him with their whole heart, with their whole soul, with their whole strength, and something in them changes. Because here's what I believe. The last 40 years of your life aren't supposed to be just chill on the golf course. You can do some golfing, it's fun. But here's the narrative in our culture. Our culture believes once you retire and you start hitting your 50s and 60s and 70s that the best is behind you. I just reject that narrative. Moses reminds us that actually, when you actually follow God, that there is something that goes constantly up and to the right. It's called faith. It's called a belief in who God says He is, that you may have a weakness, but God is going to use it and going to match it with His strength, and it doesn't end. It doesn't end. It says at the end of His life, His eyes, I want to get the wording right. It says His eyes were not dim, nor His strength gone at 120. How many want to live a great life that when you're 120 or whatever, however old you are, that you haven't lost the vision? You haven't forgot that there's something great for you that doesn't just fade off because you're 50. You say, I'll just let the young people do it. No, yeah, let them do it, but walk with them. Believe in them. Speak into them. Teach them. This is what Moses reminds us. And so he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them. That means you actually have to walk with. Impress them on your kids. That might mean you have to ask for forgiveness and maybe change some of the things that you think or the way that you act so that you can have a relationship. And then begin to impress them on your children. These commands that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. I think for me, the gift of the people in my life, like Pastor Bill and those that have been so significant around me, are people that have let love of the Lord be their legacy. And I think there's something to be said about simply saying, God, I want to live a life of legacy. I want to love you with everything in me. Would you reveal to me who I am? Would you let Him, the one who knows you and created you, and the Bible describes it as knitting you together in your mother's womb, would you allow Him to be the one who speaks into who you are? That you would leave a love legacy. And our dads do that. And so we got together this past couple weeks and we got a bunch of dads and we wanted to celebrate them. And so I'm going to show you this, but I want to remind you today that to be a hero, to leave a legacy is to reject the narrative, is to accept who you are, who God says you are, and to lead with courage. That this is how we were designed to live. So, dads, we want you to know today that we're really proud of you. Why don't you check out this video?
I feel we're too emotional for this.
I know. We'll come back. We'll come home. My goodness. Oh, boy.
What do you love about your dad?
So my dad is my superhero. He gives me strength and hope.
I love that you've never given up on me. No matter how much I was a difficult child, you just never gave up when a lot of people did.
What I love about my dad is the fact how selfless he is. He always puts everybody else first.
I love that Daddy's really nice.
You know exactly how to put a smile on my face when I'm in the worst of moods. You stay up late nights and so I can talk to you and you're there with open arms and I can just talk to you about anything.
Dad, there are tons of things I love about you. And you know a lot of them, but I think probably the thing that I have loved most about you is how intentional you are about spending time together.
You're a hardworking man, and just your passion for all of us as a family is just great.
Thanks, bud.
AJ, I want you to ask your dad that question for me.
Oh gosh, Dad, here you go.
What about me makes you proud?
What about me makes you proud?
Oh boy, what about me makes me proud? Well, for you, what makes me proud is that we can that we can actually work together and that we actually get along.
Dad, what about me makes you proud?
Tons of stuff. Your wit, your beauty, inner and outer beauty, your love for the Lord, love for people. Yeah, you're just an amazing young lady.
What about me makes you proud?
The way that you like to learn how to ride horses, that makes me proud of you.
How you found your way, your relationship with God, and that's what makes us proud.
I just love being a dad because I love going and watching you play sports and spending time with you and hanging out with you and raising up to be a Montreal Canadiens fan.
तो मैं आपको क्या चीज़ बोलता हूँ, आपको फख्र फील करता हूँ?
सबसे जो बड़ी चीज़ है वो ये है कि आप खुदा से प्यार करते हो, जो मुझे आप पर फख्र है, और अपने माँ बाप की हर चीज़ को आप उनका ख्याल रखते हो कि मेरे माँ बाप की क्या नीड्स हैं, इसलिए मुझे आप पर ये फख्र है.
What about me makes you proud?
Everything that you are, like, everything.
What about me makes you proud?
You always have a strength, an inner strength in you that is addictive. And I just love the fact that even in the moments where I feel weak, Sarah, that you actually make me feel strong and you've made me a better person.
Are you trying to make me cry or what? You doing a good job? No, I love you. I love you.
As we close today, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? And I think for us today, I'm reminded it's really simple. It starts by rejecting the narrative that you're not enough. It starts by rejecting the idea that your past defines you and that you can't change what's going forward. I just refuse that narrative. I know that I'm a failure as a dad. I know you see the highlight reels. Some of you say things that you appreciate and whatever on Facebook, but I know me. And I know the moments that I'm not present, and I know the moments that I care more about my work than my family, and I know those moments that I lash out in frustrations and I say things that I shouldn't, and I know those things. And yet we're reminded in this moment to leave a legacy is not to pretend like we don't have pain, is not to pretend like we're perfect, but to acknowledge it and to reject the fact that this is what defines us and to accept that God says, I am enough. He says, you're enough today, dads. He says, you're enough today, moms. He says, you're enough today, humans. He says, you're enough. And he says to leave a love legacy is to go forward in courage and strength with resolve, strengthening to the day that you die, focused on this invisible one who we call God, who we know, yeah, he has invisible qualities, but he is infinitely present. And he is intimately acquainted with you, even in all of his infinite possibility. And so today we celebrate that amazing truth, that you would live a life of legacy. And so as you go, I want to bless all of our dads. And so if you'd be so courageous, I would love to just invite every single dad around the room, if you'd just stand. And I want to just read to you a blessing. Go ahead, stand wherever you are. If you're watching online and you're by yourself, yeah, we could give it up for our dads. Yeah, it's amazing. We honor you, dads, today. And I want to read to you a blessing from Ephesians chapter 3. And here's what it says. This is my charge, my challenge to you. May God, out of his glorious riches, may he strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, that Christ may dwell in your heart through faith. May you, being rooted and established in love, have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. And may you know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all of the fullness of God. This is my prayer for you. And then lastly, may God, who is utterly able, do immeasurably more for you, in you, and through you, and the next generations than all you can ever ask or imagine. Amen. Amen. So God, we close this time together by simply inviting you once again to invade our hearts. God, I pray for any of us that in this room who is been defined by a narrative, God, that has been upon us, placed by others, maybe it's something we've internalized or something that we've defined because of the things we've done. God, I pray that we would begin to accept today, like we've been reminded of who you say we are, that we are loved, God, that we are enough, that we can leave a love legacy by simply looking to you, the founder of love, the one who has created us, that we would love you with our entire heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we would have courage to do so. And God, as we walk in this, God, I pray that we would leave a legacy of love for those that come after us. We would restore the things that are broken. God, for those that are living in the wilderness right now, I pray that you would remind them in this holy moment, God, that you have not abandoned them, but you have actually called them to something greater. That they would open up their hand and see, God, you've placed every single thing that they need in their hand. And they would walk with courage. They would accept the challenge to begin to walk with you. So God, we accept it. We reject the things that we need to, and we accept your challenge, and we walk with courage and strength. Thank you, God, for reminding us of this incredible truth today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Happy Father's Day. Have an amazing week. We'll see you next week.